and welcome to my Luminary Insights with Ivanna. Welcome, welcome. I know it takes a minute for people to get on sometimes, so I'm looking forward when you pop in. Please do let me know you're here by putting a comment in the chat box. Happy New Year. I missed you guys last week. It was amazing, the first week of the year, and already things were happening. And so sometimes we just have to make that call and do that self-care and take care of ourselves, especially after our internet was out for 3 full days. But it was kind of nice having a little less screen time that week. Hi, Jody. I'm so glad you're here. So I'm going to go ahead and officially get started. So welcome to Insights with Ivanna. It's a weekly broadcast designed to help you identify, embrace, and live more fully in your genius by illuminating important pieces of information that you actually already possess. So as I said at the beginning, Happy New Year. Tonight we are going to begin a new 12-week series exploring pathways to positivity. So hi, I'm Ivanna. I am the founder and chief luminary officer of Luminary Insights, an intuitive life coaching brand. So if you saw the advertisements for tonight, I'm going to ask you the same question. What if I told you that I can help you build psychological strength, good mental habits, social connections, and physical health in just 12 weeks? Well, I can. Not just for you, but for me. That's what I love about doing these is they help me grow. So are you interested? I sure hope so. I am going to warn you that you have to actually take the steps to move down the pathway. So that means applying what we discuss. If you're just watching, you won't get where you want to go, but even just listening can actually have a positive impact. So let's get started. All right, I am going to put a link in the chat box for a Google Doc that you can make a copy of. The document looks like this. It's a very simple chart. So that document, hopefully it should work. It should tell you that you need to make a copy. That way you'll download your own and you won't be writing on anybody else's document. So I'll give you just a second. Click on that document. You can type right in it. You don't have to actually download it. So in that document, this is always fun backwards. On the left column are the 4 things that we just talked about at the beginning that we can do in 12 weeks. We can work on our psychological strengths. We can build better mental habits, greater social connections, and physical health. So those are our topics in the actual sheet. Then when you look at the sheet, there are 2 more columns. One of the columns says, I don't like it, and the other column says, want. So what is something you don't like and something you want about psychological strengths? So if you were able to get to the document, you can see all my answers already. But for me, I went through each of these and wrote down a don't like. So for psychological strengths, I wrote down, I have a lot of negative self-talk. I don't really like that. Mental habits. I am a multitasker. I multitask and do many things at one time. And that's not always the best way to do things. So I don't totally dislike it, but it's something that I want to work on. My social connections. In a lot of social situations, I just sort of need to be in charge, whether that's helping someone or organizing. And not that that's a negative thing, but again, it's not always the best way to approach a social connection or a social situation. And then for physical health, what I don't like is my weight fluctuation and the fatigue that comes with that. So I'm going to give you a second. If you weren't able to download the sheet, you might want to just write it on a sheet of paper or think about it in your head. What is something you don't like? What is something psychologically about yourself that you don't really like? What's a mental habit that you don't really like? What about social connections and physical health? Something you don't really like. And I'll give you just a second to write that down. If you're willing to put something in the chat box for even one of them, that would be awesome. And I know it might be a little too quick to do it on the broadcast, so that's why I wanted you to have the chart so that you could work on it at home. So, anybody willing to type in the chat box one of the don't likes and which topic it goes with? And if you're watching this in the replay, please take the time to download the chart and walk through this yourself. All right, so Jody's sharing a habit that she doesn't like is she's not good at enforcing boundaries. Okay, yeah, I know that one too. Not good at enforcing boundaries. So now we're going to flip it. We're going to move from what we don't like to what we want. And sometimes we're really clear on what we don't like, but we're not as clear on what we want. So for me, with the negative self-talk, one of the things I want is a belief in the best. And so that belief would then take my self-talk and flip it and turn it to the other side. With the multitasking approach, I'd like to be more mindful. I'd like to really give my full attention to people and things, not always be thinking about 100 different things at once. Somebody said this week, too many tabs open on your computer and too many tabs open in your brain. And that would be me. I need to be in charge in the social connections and social situations. And I said, what I would really like is to learn to relax a little bit better and just enjoy myself, not feel like I'm responsible for helping with things, even when it's not really my job. And then for my weight and fatigue, I just wrote good health, but that's good health mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. There's a lot of pieces to what I do want with the good health. So go ahead. Yeah, the tab analogy, I can relate to that so much. Too many tabs open in my brain. So take just a second, and if you want to, Jody or others, just focus on one of them. It's like Jody wrote that the habit is not good at enforcing boundaries. What is it you do want? And take a second and write that down. And if you're willing to share, I'd love to hear. And if you can't come up with something, tell me that too. And again, if you've jumped on, please type a hello in the chat box so that I know you are here. A few people already said they were going to have to catch the replay, so I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts after you watch the replay. So Jody, if you need a little more time, let me know, or if you don't want to answer, that's okay too. But thinking about how you're going to flip it, because we're going to be doing this for 12 weeks, talking about this pathway to positivity, and this is just the first opportunity to think about flipping from what you don't want to what you do want, and it can take a while to figure that out. So I'll give it a few more seconds for anyone else that might be online, other than Jody, that might want to respond. All right, so Jody shared, improve being able to enforce and set boundaries, also continue to work on health issues. Great. So you're actually looking at more than one and getting started thinking about, we know what we don't like, but what is it we really want? And so before we go any further down the pathway to talk about how we're going to get there, I want to tell you just a little bit about how I took my first steps on this pathway to positivity. So if you know me, you know I spend a lot of time studying and practicing the more kind of ethereal, or some call it woo-woo type of positivity that my mentor Jack Canfield teaches. And that's things like, manifesting and the power of gratitude and how that can help us manifest the things we want in life through the law of attraction. Taking 100% responsibility with no complaining, blaming, excuses. All of these things are wonderful and they work, but I always want to know why. Like, what's the research behind it? Because, my day job is in government, so I need to add that citation. Where'd it come from? What's your source? Well, I'll tell you that I found a fantastic source in the field of positive psychology. So you may not know that my undergraduate degree is in psychology. I thought about going further with psychology, but ended up teaching English as a second language, where psychology helps a lot. But I'd never really heard about positive psychology. People tend to study negative and talk about that, but wow, there's this whole field of positive psychology. So anyway, before I talk about the science, let me digress just a little bit more and share this amazing synchronicity that I manifested related to positivity. So in the book, Women Who Shine, I share a story about how I was part of a book study. And that book study was digging really deep into books that combined that woo-woo aspect and the science aspect of life coaching, and it really helped me create my intuitive coaching brand, Luminary Insights, because I was learning so much about how to blend those two things together. And then something happened, and I was basically asked to leave the book study. So I tell a little bit more about that in the book, but I also share about this exciting synchronicity, and that's what I want to read to you right now from the book. So in the chapter it says, the next week at the same time I would have been in the book study, I took a donation to a local thrift shop. I was drawn to the book section, an area I typically don't explore. I had an intuition, a gut feeling that I was to find just the right book, and I asked the universe for guidance. As I ran my fingers across the spines, I stopped on a hardback titled Positivity. I took it from the shelf and I read the author's description, which states, among the most highly cited scholars in psychology, Barbara Fredrickson is most known for her broaden and build theory of positive emotions, foundational within positive psychology. I stood there in awe. This book, this research, is exactly what I was looking for to support the less scientifically based life coaching techniques I had been learning. And are you sitting down? Barbara Fredrickson, the neuroscientist who wrote the book, is right here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where I live. I have chills. Even reading that to you, I have chills all over. That was such an amazing experience for me. It was so positive, and it has really impacted my life and my work in so many different ways. I just love the book. The book describes itself as being about the science of positive mind states and how they can help us bounce back from setbacks, make meaningful connections with others, improve our health, and help us become the best version of ourselves. So I know I'm doing a little bit of reading tonight, but I think the wording is so important. And so what we're saying is that positivity is how we can build psychological strength, good mental habits, social connections, and physical health. So if you look back at your paper, and mine fell on the floor, if you look back at your paper and look at those things you just wrote down, moving from the I don't want to the I want through these steps, through this pathway to positivity, can change your whole life and make you more resilient. Now, a lot of you that are on this broadcast, I know you pretty well, and I know how resilient you are. You've been through so much. But guess what? You can even go back and erase some of the negativity in your life by bringing in more positivity. So I have a few questions for you. You may have heard this in a previous broadcast, so let's see if you remember it. Approximately how many thoughts do we have in a day? So if you'll type it in the chat box, about how many thoughts do you think we have in a day? And we'll see what we get. You must be thinking about it. I can tell you last time we did this, I had someone say 500. I had someone say 10,000. Any ideas about how many thoughts do we have in a day? I'm not seeing people frantically type in the chat box, so I'll go ahead and tell you. Some of the research out there says we have between 40 and 60,000 thoughts in a day. It was multiple choice before, but I've had people actually get kicked off the system by doing the prompts, and so I haven't been doing them. I do want to give a disclaimer. There is some new research out with very different numbers, but we're going to go with this because this is the research that I'm most familiar with. So 40 to 60,000 thoughts in a day. On average, about what percent of those thoughts do you think are typically negative? So the answer is 40 to 60,000. What percentage of those do you think are potentially negative for the typical person? So I don't remember what my options were last time. 10%, 50%, 100%. What percent? Type in the chat box, take a guess. And I know sometimes there's a delay. 26%. Okay, I'm going to pause a little bit more just in case you're watching the replay and you want to guess as well. This research says up to, drumroll please, 80%. Up to 80% are negative. So if you have up to 80%, that means 30% maybe of your thoughts are neutral or positive. That's kind of scary to me. And again, there's some new research out. that says we have fewer thoughts than that, but I haven't seen any research that's refuting this percent of negativity. So I want you to try a simple activity. Lots of typing, yeah, ouch, on 80%. Lots of typing from you guys tonight. So I want you to try this activity. We know negativity is everywhere. Type one negative thought that you thought today in the chat box. So my negative thought would be, I just don't have it all together. Type a negative thought in the chat box. More than one if you want to. I don't know how long my delay is tonight. So if it pops up, I will read it. But I bet you can think of more than one. And what I want you to think about, there we go, laundry never ends. Yeah, see my body, even when I say it, even when I read your comment, and when I talked about I just don't have it all together, my eyes get big, my hands get tight, stress, right? So how do you feel when you think or say things like that that are negative? So for me, I feel tense, I don't breathe as well. So think about, how does your body feel when you're saying and thinking negative things, even when you're thinking them? All right, we're going to flip it. We're not even going to take any more time with the negative right now. What is something positive you thought or said today? I told myself, I really made progress on that project. Because I started with, I just don't have it all together. There's so much to do. And then I'm like, wait, I've already made progress and I made more progress today. So what's something positive that you said today or thought? Sometimes it's harder to think about the positives than it is the negatives. And sometimes it's just the delay in my system. Something positive you thought or said today. The car turned out awesome with the Lego set. Yes. All right. So how do you feel in your body when you say or think those positive things? My eyes get big again, but it's a different kind of big. It's an excitement. It's energizing me. It's not draining me. It's not really relaxing me, but it's also not tensing my muscles up. So there's a difference. Which felt better? The positive. And why? And we'll be exploring that throughout these few weeks. But here's a beautiful quote from Dr. Fredrickson, the author of Positivity, and I think it sums it all up. Yay, thank you, Jody. You felt happy and proud and energized. Absolutely. So, why do we feel better? And it's a really interesting quote from Dr. Fredrickson that says, just as water lilies retract when sunlight fades, so do our minds when positivity fades. I'm going to read it again. Just as water lilies retract when sunlight fades, so do our minds when positivity fades. And so just think of that water lily retracting, and we're just getting tense when we have that negativity instead of the positivity. And when the positivity comes, we open back up. It also made me think of Dr. Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages. If you're familiar with the 5 love languages, one of his analogies, he talks about the love tank and how your love tank goes down and it has to be filled up. And it has to be filled with those things that make you feel positive. So I don't know if you're familiar with Gary Chapman or not and the 5 love languages, but a fantastic book. There's a whole series now. So anyway, all that to say, we need more positivity in our lives. And I'm not talking about toxic positivity. That's a term that's become popular lately. That's when you kind of pretend everything is well and you then end up maybe getting physically ill, or you really upset other people because you are just playing that everything's happy, and it's not natural, it's not real. What I'm talking about with positivity is the type where we really flip our negatives and we teach our minds to look at the world a different way. Yay, Jody, you are familiar with Gary Chapman's books. That's awesome. And I don't know if you know Gary Chapman. I don't know where he lives now, but when he wrote these books originally, he lived in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So pretty cool. I got to meet him once. Anyway, So here's another question for you. I'm sorry there's no multiple choice. Have you ever heard of something called the positivity ratio? That's the number of positives that it takes to equal or counter one negative. So you can type a Y or an N in the thing, but also take a stab at it, the ratio. How many positives to counter or equal that one negative? What do you think that ratio is? I need a little music. Do 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 boom boom. Jody says she knows how much. Ah, Jody said 5-1. Well, it can be very helpful and wonderful if you have 5-1. But the research shows that it is 3-1. That negatives, you got it on the mark, Jody, that negatives are stronger than positives. And so we have to take steps on this pathway to build our positivity muscles, right? We'll spend time doing that tonight and for the next 11 weeks. But in the research, and we'll probably talk about it more later, a lot of people hang out at 1-1 or 2-1. And those people are not becoming more resilient. They're not flipping those ideas of what they don't like and what they do want. So the research says 3-1. And I had heard about this ratio for many, many years. I had no idea where it came from. And like I said, I always want to know where did it come from. Guess where it came from? Dr. Fredrickson did a research project with another researcher who used statistical analysis, and that's where they discovered the 3-1 ratio. And by golly, if you've got 5-1 ratio, you probably are just over the moon, happy and wonderful and excited. So 3-1 is what we're shooting for. Uh-oh. Jody needs to revisit the positivity course. Yes, so Dr. Fredrickson does have a positivity course. I forgot you took it too. That's available, and you can reach out and I'll tell you more about that. The book, I'm going to tell you the book, I've gotten more out of the book than I even got out of the course, and they're both fantastic. So there's so much I want to share, but I'm going to stop here for tonight, and I want you to go back to the chart. Let me pick mine up off the floor. Go back to the chart for one last thought. Here's your challenge for the week. So once you've filled out the don'ts, log your, you can do both, but log your occurrences. So when you figure out what you don't like, which is usually the easiest thing to do, write down or just consciously, every time you do one of the things under that don't, think about it and say, oh, how many times did I do that today, right? Do that for a day or two, and then for the next day, when you do that thing that's in your don't like, figure out how you can flip it to your want. So let me give you an example, because I'm not sure I'm explaining it real well, because it's 7:30 at night. But tomorrow, when I catch myself with my negative self-talk, I might write it down. I'm walking through the house and I'm like, oh, I need to vacuum. Why can't I get it all together? I've got work to do. I'm never going to get it all done. Okay? Those are my negative self-talk. And I may not have even been aware I was doing it before, but now I'm aware of it, so I'm going to write it down. So then the next day, when I have that thought or something similar, I'm going to flip it. So I catch myself again thinking, oh, why can't I get it all done? So now I can flip it, but guess what? I want to use 3 positives because we talked about that 3-1 ratio. So I'm going to flip it for my 3 positives. So one positive might be, I'm doing a great job on that work project. You know, I'm giving myself lots of time on that. It's really coming along well. I have my Luminary Insights broadcast notes already started for next week. Whoop, whoop. How exciting is that? And then one of my favorites that's always good for me to remind myself is that I kept my mouth closed when I had a negative comment from my husband. All of those things are kind of like going, cancel, cancel, erase, erase, to that negative thing that I was thinking in my mind. So your challenge for this week is to take this page, fill it out, and then when you catch yourself with those things you don't like, first notice them before you change them, but then start figuring out how can you flip them, how can you change them. So if you're willing to try that this week, type a Y in the chat. Even if you're on the replay, I will see it, and I would love to know that you are willing to try it. So type a Y in the chat if you are willing to try it. And I will also, I'm glad you liked the challenge assignment. I wasn't sure how people would feel about homework because I've been doing meditations and things like that. But like I said at the beginning, you have to actually take the steps. We can talk about it all day. When I say you, I mean me too. We actually have to take the steps or we're not going to get where we want to be. But if you're not ready to take the steps, that's okay. We're planting that seed. So I look forward next week to hearing about those of you that agree to try it. Again, if you're watching the replay, please type Y in the chat box if you are willing to do it, because I want to hear about it next week. So also, if you are interested in going deeper in the positivity concept, then we're going to be able to go in these broadcasts. You can fill out the Let's Talk form at myluminaryinsights.com. And thank you, Jody, for putting that in the chat box. So please do me a favor, share this broadcast with your friends or your enemies. Share it with anybody who might gain something from it. And let's walk down this pathway to positivity together. I really appreciate your time coming and supporting me. I appreciate also some of the messages that I'm receiving from people saying how much it means to them. And it helps me when I hear from you how it impacts your life. So you can email me at Ivanna at myluminaryinsights. I don't even know what my email address is. Jody, what's my email? myluminaryinsights.com. Ivanna at myluminaryinsights.com, I think. I'll have to put it in the chat box. Wow. Guys, thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a great day.